And what the drivers say they fear most of all is a head-on collision with a blind tube mare.
Personally, I think the management should round him up. Get rid of him.
What's up, YouTube? Hello. So, part 5 of Stuart Lee, stand-up comedian. And I'm just going to literally just bloody dive right in, okay? Watch this. Oh, not yet.
So, I think I always knew Glasgow. Can hardly believe this is happening. I always knew that I was a Scotch man, and so I always knew. Scottish. Thank you for correcting me. Sorry. It was an error I made on purpose for comic effect, and I'm glad that there's so little trust in me in the room that people are going, "He's a fucking idiot. He doesn't know. He's insane. What's he talking about? He hasn't done the most basic research." But even despite that, I always knew that I was Scottish in my heart, in my brave heart. I always knew that I was. Okay, shout out if you've seen the film Braveheart. You've all seen it, shout out. Okay, now you'll know more than any other audience I've played in the last 3 weeks that Braveheart is the shittest film ever made, right? It was directed by the reactionary Catholic bigot Mel Gibson, and it's full of basic fundamental historical errors which insult your race and mine by association, right? Here's just 3 off the top of my head. Firstly, William Wallace, Braveheart, your national hero, he wasn't some, noble savage living in a mud hut. We all know that. He was a privileged, educated nobleman, right? Secondly, it's not mentioned by Mel Gibson in the film, but there's some evidence to suggest that he actually fought as a mercenary for the English as a teenager. That's conveniently missed out. Thirdly, that French princess, he's supposed to have sex with this French princess in the film, you remember? And the implication is that he gets her pregnant and she marries Edward II of England, so it's his kid. Now, she was a real historical figure, that French princess. But at the time of the death of William Wallace, Braveheart, your national hero, she was only 4 years old. Now, Glasgow, I'm not saying that William Wallace, Braveheart, your national hero, didn't have sex with her. He probably did. If I look at my own personal background, there's a lot of sexual opportunism involved in it. But, not saying he didn't have sex, he probably did. But if he did, and he did, he definitely did, right? It would have been a far less romantic scene than the one enacted by Mel Gibson in the film Braveheart. It may have happened in a tent, but it would still have been not a romantic scene, because that would have made William Wallace, Braveheart, your national hero, a paedophile. A Scottish paedophile. The worst kind of paedophile that there is. Coming at you through a bothy, with shortbread on its face, muttering unintelligible sexual threats in a frankly incomprehensible dialect. But another weird thing about that film is, in it, fine, leave at this point. It gets worse. A man leaving there to go away and think about the idea of a paedophile Braveheart in the privacy of the toilet cubicle. But it's not the way. The other weird thing about that film is that in it, if you remember, Mel Gibson makes a big deal about the fact that Edward II, the English prince, was gay, right? As if not only did he oppress the Scots, but he did it in a kind of a gay way. Which makes it worse. But the irony is, again, it's not mentioned in the film, that William Wallace, Braveheart, your national hero himself, was actually gay. And no, he was, sir. And we know this from some information that's come to light in the last couple of years. Firstly, about 2 years ago, they found a cache of love letters hidden in a nook at Glamis Castle or somewhere. And the letters were exchanged between William Wallace and Robert the Bruce, and they were full of declarations. They were full of declarations of love and details of their sexual encounters, very vigorous sexual encounters that they had. But that's one thing. Then about a year ago, they found some graffiti on a wall, on an old Scottish wall, on the wall of a broch, actually, which is the Broch of Gurness, which is a real place in the Orkneys. They found it there, and it said the graffiti, which is real, existed. It said, "I am a gay." Signed William Wallace. Braveheart, and the Braveheart bit was in inverted commas, so they knew that meant it was real. It was like a fun nickname, you know, it's like real. So William Wallace, Braveheart, our national hero, was gay. And when I was talking about this in Edinburgh in the summer, people were going, well, why didn't we know about that? You know, and the reason is because the graffiti and the letters were written in Gaelic, so it wasn't translated. And people are going, well, why wasn't it translated? That's just the ancient language of our nation, of the Scots. Why wasn't it translated? But it wasn't. What Gaelic actually was a very kind of highly evolved form of medieval Scottish homosexual patois. And the clue's in the name, if you look at it, right? Gaelic, that means gay, homosexual gay, and then lich is language or tongue. So Gaelic is literally the language of gays. And, you know, I was booed off at the assembly rooms for saying this in Edinburgh, but it's true, and I don't think I think it's really great that our national hero, William Wallace, was gay, because Scotland's always been a much more progressive, liberally minded, and kind of a nation that's not afraid to show its feminine side. And I think that compared to England, which is a very backward, kind of bigoted place, and I think that it's really good that as we enter the 21st century, one of your national folk heroes can embody a kind of progressive notion of sexual identity. I think that's a really brilliant thing, and I wish that some of the English folk heroes, like King Alfred or Robin Hood or King Arthur, had been gay, but they weren't. And it's only William Wallace, Braveheart, the Scottish one, that definitely was gay. And of course another... Sorry? Someone said Robin Hood was surely, and someone there saying Men in Tights, but of course the Men in Tights addition to the Robin Hood legend was made in the 1980s by Mel Brooks. The facility to make those kind of tights didn't exist in medieval England. If it had have done, maybe they would have worn them. I'm sure that a thin dernier tight is an ideal garment for medieval combat, offering as it does no protection whatsoever to the human leg. But of course the other major inaccuracy about that film, of course, is in the Middle Ages there was no such country as Scotland. Scotland was actually invented, as you all know, in 1911 by the McGowan Sweet Company as a way of marketing Highland toffee. Because, of course, traditionally we think toffee's better if it's manufactured at a high altitude. Again, I was making a number of kind of crass generalisations about the Scots, about my country then. I don't believe any of them. Again, I did it for comic effect.
Ah, great stuff. So, that is, I think, well, it's definitely my favourite bit so far of this routine. It's so clever. I mean, he sort of endlessly insults the audience. And a lot of comedians say that Glasgow is one of the hardest places to do comedy, and yet there he is in Glasgow taking the piss out of Scottish people and William Wallace, and he does it so well. And I think the fact that he can say these things that are really offensive and yet carry them along with him is just testament to how good he's constructed the act, how good his delivery is, and just how the workings of his mind sort of come up with this way of it's manipulation. I think all good comedians, all good artists, all good filmmakers are able to manipulate their audience, so they sort of know the effect they're going to have on you before they even start. And Stuart Lee often does this thing, which I think I put a comment about at one point there, where he sort of sets up the audience to say or think a certain thing, and then he picks them up on it. I think it was the Scotch thing near the beginning. And the last thing to say very briefly is, I think one thing that's occurred to me is the explaining of jokes is particularly funny to me, because me and my friends used to do it when we were about sort of 18-ish, that sort of age. Three lads together, generally the three of us, making stupid jokes, and then we'd sort of explain the joke and why it was funny, and then that was funny as well, and then we would have conversations about how funny it was that we explained the jokes that we made to each other, even though it was obvious why it was funny. So yeah, it's quite a sort of personal thing for me. So thank you, hope you enjoyed that, and part 6 is coming soon, so don't nobody go nowhere.
And in a statement issued just 10 minutes ago, the Home Secretary announced that he personally will be going into the tunnels this weekend, armed with a special gun.